Welcome to the Art and Faith Podcast. Today, I have my friend Jarod O'Flaherty with me. Jarod is the creator of the show Vindication. He wears a lot of hats: show creator, director, showrunner, producer, sometimes even actor. We're going to talk about all of that, but I'm so excited to have him with us here today. Welcome, Jarod.
Hey, thank you. And mention me as an actor. Everyone who has worked with me is going to laugh at that. We might talk about that story later, but yeah, let's stick with the other ones.
Okay, let's stick with the others first. So tell me how Vindication got started.
Yeah, so I had done, oh my goodness, for probably 10 years or so, had done short projects through my church, a lot of live action things I would edit together, and it gave me an audience of church members. And as technology progressed, it gave me the opportunity to do things more cinematic, more that look like Hollywood. And so while I didn't have any type of theater background, writing background, I was a tech nerd. It was interesting for me to keep trying this, and eventually just small baby steps that progressed to being able to do what was the first episode of Vindication. It's meant to be a short film, just kind of seeing, hey, what would it be like to work with real actors and real crew for the first time after doing most of this stuff myself, kind of the one-man band, wearing lots of hats, doing lots of holding a light and a camera and directing and all that. So it was just kind of an attempt at this for a short film, and with God's favor, with audiences enjoying the first one we did, it opened doors for us to now do, we're finishing up our fourth season. So
yeah, that's exciting. What year was it when you shot that first episode?
It was October 2015 is when we shot the first episode. And for all of 2016, we were like putting it in film festivals and doing that type of run before releasing it to the world and moving on to something else. And so it really was never my vision to turn it into a series. It really was just a short film, but the audience response was so positive that they're like, hey, we want you to do another one of these. Like could the detective have another case? And that was really what set the stage for the series.
That's great. For people who don't know Vindication, give us just a quick description of the show.
Yeah, so at the high level, it's a faith-based crime drama series. It follows a detective, Gary Travis, in a small town in Texas, a fictional town. And each episode, at least in the first season, he's investigating a different case. And we say that God's thumbprint shows up in all of these cases. And he is I would say maybe a casual Christian, casual believer, maybe not at all. You really don't know through these episodes, but it's not the guiding force in his life. And as these thumbprints start showing up, it starts resonating with him like, okay, what is going on? Like every time I work on a case, God shows up in some form or fashion, like what's going on? And he has a wife who's a believer, so she sees it. She's like, God's pursuing you. He's trying to get your attention. And his reaction is like, well, how do I make it stop? So anyway, that's kind of how the first season builds up. And then after that, you learn more about his home life, his co-workers, some of the other characters in his life. We see more about them. And so it really fleshes out in the following seasons into a thicker episodic series. So it's not just crime of the week each time, but that's definitely still an element to it. And fans of the show, that's what they enjoy, both elements. They like the crime of the week, but also the families and the storylines. Yeah,
it seems like at first it was crime of the week, and then you had a season where you really did character development. Was that season 3?
Season 3 only had basically one crime that was investigated the whole season. So it was, whereas seasons 1 and 2, you'd had 8 to 10 that were investigated throughout the season. Yeah, that's great. I like how you're breaking out for us what you mean by a faith-based crime drama, because that's a new space. Yeah.
Something that I picked up from hearing you talk about your work, and then also from Christian Worldview Film Festival, which is where we met each other,
right.
Is that there's a way to think about faith-based film. We're saying we're not necessarily preaching the gospel in every single episode, extending an opportunity to receive Christ every time the viewer comes to the table, or to the screen, but we're just creating art inside a world where God exists. And it is so interesting. Once I got a hold of that concept and I started watching television and looking for that, it is, it's like God doesn't exist on on so much TV that I watch.
Yeah, there may be a prayer at a Thanksgiving dinner, or you may see a steeple in the background when someone's walking to church, or even if they go into church, it's a generic message, and the characters are just ready to get out and go, so it's like he exists, but he's not active in the lives of the characters. And so, those are my words. In a world where God exists is what we say. One of our cast members, T.C. Stallings, the way he puts it, he says, it's compelling, engaging, interesting stories where God's not left out of the equation. And so I like that description as well of how we tell stories. But you're right, there are some episodes that you watch, and if you didn't know that character A was a Christian, character B was not, you may not, this was a faith-based show. So we were at a festival once, and I thought it was a great compliment, but there was someone there who had mentioned that, I watched the whole series, and I got like till the 8th episode and didn't realize it was a Christian show. It was like, these people kind of pray a lot and talk about God, but he didn't realize that. And I thought, well, that's really good, because the stories were engaging enough that he kept watching, not knowing, and then just thinking it was part of the story. It was organically interwoven into the storylines. So it was a compliment.
Yeah, I think for a lot of things that get made, that's where we want to be. We want to just have great content, great stories. Yeah. And they just need to work. We don't need to be watching them because we're rooting for them. That's not really an enjoyable watch. We want to be participating in art and enjoying it because it's good.
Sure.
Yeah. And I have enjoyed Vindication in that way. And I'm excited for the next season.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so getting back to this, you've had 4 seasons. You started the way you started. You've had different support come alongside you as you've moved through each season. What have you learned? What's like maybe the thing that you would say, I really learned this between season 1 and season 2, and 2 and 3, and 3 and 4? What's that growth looks like for you?
Yeah, that's tricky. The one that comes to mind at first is in creating art, any type of artist, whether it's music, film, even painting, whatever, you can't please everyone because it's a matter of taste, you know? And so it's something you have to think about when you're going into creating it. It's like, hey, I know there's going to be some people that this isn't for them, and I can't let that detract from the stories that I'm trying to tell. And that it can be tough because a lot of times artists are perfectionists and everyone wants approval from everyone who's out there. And if one negative comment will always outweigh 10 positive comments, right? And so just learning in that process, hey, you can't please everyone. Particularly in the Christian space, I've learned that everyone has their own meter, their own gauge for what they feel like should or should not be in Christian content, whether it's topics, whether it's visuals, whether it's words or anything like that. And while I would say our show is very conservative, there's language and things that aren't a part of my life, and so they don't end up in the show, but there will be other people who their gauge, their meter is below that. And I've also learned everyone thinks their meter is right, So wherever you're at, what that has done for me is just, hey, I need to, with a clear conscience, go and make the content as I see fit that I think is appropriate, with the understanding that, hey, it may not hit 100% of people where they love it, but if you can get 80% or you can get 75, 90, then it's a good place to be.
Yeah, that's good. Somewhere I picked up this quote that says the only way to please everybody is to say nothing and do nothing.
Yeah. Great point.
So,
yes.
Yeah. What are some ways as you've gone about making the show that you've seen God show up?
I actually keep a log of that now. It seems like every day of shooting, and we've done close to 150 days spread across the 4 seasons. That doesn't sound like much, 150 days. Well, every day is not, 4 hours of showing up, sitting around. I mean, it is 10, 12-hour days of hard, pressing, work. So each day, it's a lot to do 150. And it seems like every day will have its road bumps or something that gets in the way that you think, oh no, this is going to be the one that throws us off track. We run everything on our shoots are so tight that if we ever have a day that gets rained out or a flight of a cast member canceled, it will wreck the rest of it. It will be a disaster. And it hasn't happened yet. So you want to talk about God? Now, I don't like saying that because
that's provision.
It could, but I look at it and go, there's no way you shoot for the number of days we have and not have something at some point come up that throws things off track, and yet it hasn't happened yet. There have been things, but it has never been enough to
derail
the whole shoot. God's always provided an answer or a solution. A lot of times it's he held off the rain. You look at a schedule and go, we're outside filming today, and my phone's saying 100% chance of rain the whole day, and you get there and you see the clouds, and at any moment we're done, and then you wrap and go, it didn't rain on us today. How did that happen? And as you're driving home in the car, rain is pouring on you. So that's just a small example.
Yes.
All 150 days have an example like that.
I love that. We are the Art and Faith podcast. So we like to talk about where art and faith come together. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting. I feel like so many people have those stories especially in film, because the stakes are so high for each day of work. Yeah. And, they're covered in prayer and you're super hopeful. But I think God is really moved by faith. And so when you bring your faith, then he shows up. Mm-hmm. And it is a tremendous act of faith to plan a day of shooting. It's so the moving people, the moving equipment, the scheduling people, the location, the weather. Mm-hmm. I think that's just an incredible place to see him in. Let's see. You mentioned something about acting early on. I was going through all the roles that you have played in making the show, and I asked you before we started talking if you'd ever done a cameo. So for our listeners, where might we find you on screen? Okay,
yeah, your question was, Jarod, have you ever made a cameo? And I said, yes, I have. And then you said, oh, he also acts, which it's
how's the acting career going for you?
Yeah, no, it was very short-lived. So in the final episode of season 1, there's a scene where one of our characters, Chris Tanner, is in the hospital, and our main character, Gary Travis, comes in to visit her. And so we didn't know if this was going to be the end of Vindication, that it was just going to be a 1-season show. So I said, hey, I'll throw myself in. I'm the nurse that shows him into the hospital room. So I just walked by in the background very quick, just to have my little Alfred Hitchcock or, my cameo moments. And it was funny, though, because for a whole season, everyone had seen me directing and sometimes nitpicking on, hey, okay, I want, keep this arm up and that arm down and don't lift your eyebrow, just
all
directing all these things. I'm not that bad, but it happens occasionally. And then when I got on screen, it was terrible. I would smile and as soon as I would do my scene, I would look around and everyone on set is like cracking up and covering their faces and trying to not break the scene. And there was even a time that I walked by and broke the scene. I go, oh no, hold on, stop. That was and so I was awful at it. And that was my expectation, but I couldn't even walk by a room and show someone in. So the best take of them is what ended up in the final cut. So it looks okay, but to get there took many, many takes. And so, acting career was one scene, one time. Okay,
well, hopefully you'll appear again. But it's funny, I think because we watch so much TV, because everybody's watched a lot of movies, we all have this idea inside, like, I could probably be an actor. Mm-hmm. Like, I could go stand in front of my bathroom mirror and redo that scene. And man, it's a skill set. It really is, as are all these other things. So when I get to have somebody like you on the show, I always want to ask, because so many people dream of being an actor, what's your best advice for actors? How do you go from your bathroom mirror to, being on set?
Yeah, that's a great question. When you're mentioning about everyone feeling like, oh, I could probably act, I've probably watched, I don't know, maybe 5,000, possibly 10,000 auditions.
And what percentage of them were good?
Usually for us, because we get so many, it's not a matter of, oh, these are all bad and there's one good one. It's like there will be 5 or 10 good ones for a character, and now you're having to decide which of the goods.
Yeah.
It's not good and bad. It's
that's great to hear.
Best of the good. Yeah. Now, are there those, you'll have some where the person has memorized a page or two, and then the next person's audition tape, they're literally reading the script.
Yeah.
And you go, that's not it. That's not going to get you there, unfortunately, because there's so many people.
Yeah. Okay, what does get your attention?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. That's where I was leading to my advice for the actors. I have learned that the ones who make bold choices, the ones who create a character, are typically the ones that book a role. Because for me, as the filmmaker, a lot of times I haven't seen these characters before. They've only been on paper. And so when I see these auditions, the people that are just kind of going through the lines a little bit with that's but then you have the one who creates a character. It's almost like you can feel a backstory and everything in just the way they present everything. Those are the ones that usually book roles. So now sometimes you make a bold choice and it's just the wrong direction, but you know what? I think you have a lot better chance than just memorizing the lines and reciting them. It's creating a character. So going into an audition with that in mind, I think is great advice.
So I talk to people who audition for Broadway pretty steadily, which is just like a full-time job, as is the TV and film world, just audition. And bold choices seem to show up there too. It's pretty risky when you just have what you have. You just have the side. You don't know sometimes, what else is happening around, especially if it's a new show and you don't have that context. Yeah. And so you can really miss.
Oh, yeah.
If you create a backstory or go hard in a direction. But I've had people tell me that audition for Broadway that sometimes they don't book the part, but they build the relationship. The person sees the audition and it's super memorable, and maybe they call them for something else. Do you think that kind of thing happens a lot in your world too?
100%. Yeah. It definitely happens. There was one episode 8 of season 1, when I went in to write that episode, the idea was I went back and looked at auditions we had received in the past of people I really wanted to work with because they were very talented but didn't book the earlier roles, and wrote an episode fitting all those different characters in.
Wow.
Fitting those people. Now, I don't think that's common. I haven't done that since, but it was one of you saw these great performances of people that didn't quite book a role. So let's go create an episode with them. It's almost like when you're given a writing prompt, back in school, okay, I want you to use a cat and a wheelbarrow and a lake and and go tell a story with that. Well, that's kind of what I did. Okay, with these cast members, let's go and tell a story and make them all fit together. So keeping that in mind, you go back and watch episode 8 and you can probably see okay, I see where that happened of all these different characters.
Totally going to go look for that now.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've watched Gilmore Girls, but it's, a show that a lot of people are familiar with. And there's this character called Paris Geller on there who's super memorable to me. And I heard that she had auditioned for the main character, but she was so memorable that they wrote her into the show, and she goes, she survives the whole show, all the seasons of it, and is super compelling. So I love to hear how those things happen.
Yeah, for people that are familiar with Vindication, the role of Kevin, which he's kind of the tech nerd guy, has a crush on Chris Tanner, the girl, the detective. He auditioned for the second episode of the show to be a one-episode character and didn't get that role. But I loved his tape, so when we had this character come up, he was the first one we went to, and what he originally auditioned for, just a single episode, single character, became 3 seasons, character arc, and all of that sort of stuff for him. But he started out that way, where he auditioned for something else and then became a character that was, beloved and went through multiple seasons.
Yeah, it's fun to hear. Okay, give us your advice for getting from, the sofa to on set if you're on the other side of the camera.
Yeah, it's tricky. What I've told people recently, I get lots of people that reach out, Jarod, I'd love to be involved in Vindication. Okay, great. And then the next thing is, here's what I do. I'm a camera operator, I'm a writer, I'm and this kind of thing. And while that's hey, I understand it, those are usually jobs that are filled already. Those are the jobs that we have people for. The ones that call and say, hey, Jarod, I want to get on set in Vindication. What do you need? And that's what I'm going to do. If it's, you need me to be the person that takes the trash to the dump at the end of the day, that's what I'm going to do. If you need me to pick up people from the airport, if you need, whatever it is, that's what those are the people that, for one, make an impression, and 2, they're going to get on set. Now, are they going to stay in that role forever? Of course not. When you have a person that you trust and they're like, the next time a role opens up or a position opens up for, a second AC or maybe just not beginner level, but, one of those jobs, you're going to say, well, I know this person. This person saved the day 8 different times for us. Let's plug them in there. So that's my advice if you want to get from the couch to on set, is don't go with your menu of here's what I offer. Instead, go and say, what need can I fill, and then pursue it with excellence.
Yeah, that's great. We hope you're enjoying the Art and Faith podcast, brought to you by 5 Talents Fund. So, Jarod, love your work in Vindication. I mean, honestly, you know this, I've told you this before, but seeing your show was one of the things that made me want to come into this space because I was not used to seeing God on television. And I went to a film festival and I saw Vindication shown, and it really challenged me and it really made me think. And I thought, that guy is doing something really special. And I wanted to meet you and I wanted to get involved. And so I want to know, what else is on the horizon? Are there other things on the horizon?
Wow, for like the last 4 years, Vindication has been pretty much I won't say my life, but as far as profession, it's actually a blend of my ministry, my profession, and my hobby. And it's all been blended together. That's what Vindication has been. And I've been so focused on that there hasn't really been a lot of opportunities to look beyond. But just in the last few months, really, doors have begun to open of people saying, hey, we like what you've done with this. Yeah. What would be next? What would happen next? What would you do next? And so I've had the opportunity to say, what would I want to do next if I had a clean slate to start fresh? I really love the series space, especially when it comes to faith market, because there's not a lot of them. Like every month now, you're going to have 4 or 5 movies come out that are faith-based films, Christian films, whatnot. But on series, especially bingeable ones, multiple seasons, there are very, very few that are coming out. And so, but on the secular side or on the other side, there's tons of them going on. There's probably hundreds going on. So I really am passionate about that space. And so anything I would do next is really focused, I think, on the series landscape of what I would do next. And so, I've been developing things. I've also had people reach out and say, hey, we want you to come direct this, or hey, we want you to look at this script and write, which is new to me because that for the first 2 or 3 years of Vindication, that never happened. But those opportunities are opening up. And when I go into a project, it's not just for a paycheck. It's not just to fill time. It is like, hey, this is if I'm going to do this, I'm going to pour everything into it, and I want it to be something I'm proud of, and that one day in the future at my funeral, this is going to be, in the little description of Jarod, right? He worked on this. If it's not worthy of being there, then I don't know that I really want to be a part of it. So that's how I pursue projects, and so anything in the future, that's what I hope it would. I'm going to pour everything into it, and would want it to be something that I want mentioned next to my name.
That's a great filter. I think a lot of people make a decision one way or the other, especially with actors. I meet people who say, everything that I worked on was not my favorite project. I needed to pay the bills, feed my family, do the next thing. And so, maybe I've been in 100 different things and I feel great about some of them. And then some people say I really, am very selective, and if I need to dig ditches in between projects, I will, to be really protective of the content. So that's an interesting decision that people either unintentionally or intentionally make about their art.
Yeah, I'll jump in and say, as far as how I was describing it, if it's a project that I'm going to be the catalyst behind it, that's where I have that filter. Yeah. There may be other projects that people want me to come in and help out and be a part of, improve.
Sure.
That maybe it's not the same, but if I'm going to be the one behind it, it's got to be something that I'm going to be passionate about and willing to give 100% and make sacrifices because I believe in it.
Yeah, because you're spending your actual life. It's interesting to think it was 2015, it's 2024 now. Like, that's a long run to build this product.
And the sacrifices aren't just myself. I have 5 children, I have a spouse, and they make sacrifices just as much as I do. So I have to be willing to stand there and say this was worth the sacrifices not only I made, but they made as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, let's talk about the state of the industry for a second. So I'm encouraged overall by the volume of content, by the rising quality of content. I just think we need so much more everything, more funding, more content, more skilled people in the space, more distribution, to more advertising to make people aware of things. How are you feeling about the growth that you're seeing in the industry?
Yeah, I think I've always thought that there are probably 2 markets in America. One of them has been 50%, of the country has been well served for a long time, and then there's another half of the country that has not. That they've watched the stuff that's being put out, but it's not things that resonate with them based on where they live, what their values are, or whatnot. And that 50%, I think, is maybe what you speak of that needs more content and more things that you just say, hey, this I connect with this. This is what I like. This is what I want to watch. And while definitely the quality is improving and the volume is improving, I think there's some opportunities to get more creative, more daring with those stories, as opposed to, hey, we're going to tell a true story based on this, or we're going to tell this person's life story, or there's just kind of this theme, or hey, this is going to be a very lighthearted, romantic boy meets girl and a little God sprinkled in, right? We've got a lot of those going. We've got a lot of the true stories, but I think there's opportunities to expand, and that's what I'm hoping to see. More shows like Vindication, but I don't have to make them. I just get to sit down and watch them. That's what I'm hoping for. And is that going to happen? I think it's the people that do have the money being willing to take that risk and say, I think there's an audience for this, even though it hasn't been done yet.
Yeah. I was thinking about risk this morning for investors, and this is what I feel like God's putting in my heart is you want to de-risk something when you invest in it. But when you think about kingdom vision and you start bringing or allowing the weight of things like, well, this is a bad time in the economy, and maybe if I do this, I won't be able to do this. You really can enter into a scarcity mentality, and kingdom vision begins to become at risk when people who have means to push into things lean into that scarcity. And so I think that's its own kind of thing that needs to be mitigated. But yeah, investment is super important. Courage from everybody is super important, and everybody has to make big moves to make new things happen. Writers have to be ready with things. Actors have to be ready with their skill. People on the other side of the camera have to bring their whole selves to the project. And then, funding's got to show up.
I'll let you in on like something that happens behind closed doors or something that is said, but the people that have been primarily responsible for the funding of Vindication, to see it go through now 4 seasons, have repeated many times in these private behind closed door meetings that I'm a part of, that doing Vindication never made financial sense from the beginning, but it was something that God was leading them to do, and so they had to do it. And I've thought, wow. And it has, as it has grown, has started to make, okay, this is making financial sense. But then we're going to take we're going to take an even bigger leap out. So,
yes.
So I think that goes a lot to what you're saying, that if God tells you to do something, even if it doesn't make financial sense, sometimes it's the thing to do, and then you trust him to bring in those results. And I don't think you ever get to the end of it and go, man, wish we hadn't done that.
No.
God told us to do that, man, we shouldn't have done it. I don't think that ever happens.
Yeah, and I think you've got to look at the whole picture. I think there's a lot of people investing in, people want to invest in emerging markets, and they'll say, we want to be involved in job creation. But this is that same kind of space. We've got to be involved in job creation. We've got to be involved in talent creation and laying groundwork and infrastructure in the entertainment industry where people of faith can have a voice. It needs its own infrastructure, and it may not be as evident, but that's an important, long, big vision for investors. I
think people that look at the culture in America and they say, I don't like the direction this is going. I'm going to take some of my resources and try to make a difference.
Yeah.
And so they invest in political campaigns or political parties or politicians. And I look and say that I think entertainment will define the culture a whole lot more than what happens in state capitals and United States capitals. That when you get to that level, you're seeing the results of culture change.
Yes.
And so yet people look at the money that gets invested in politics and all those sort of things,
right.
And lobbying.
It's massive.
They're trying to change the culture, and it's like, but what's defining the culture is what's happening in entertainment. Those who are telling the stories define the culture. And yet we take our investment and don't go to that area. Instead, we try to contain it at the political side. So
yeah, that's so good. I think it's those who tell the stories. I think it's those who write and sing the songs. I think it's those who create the symbols that become important in our culture, the artist, and everything is downstream of culture. If you think of culture like a river, and like a very polluted river, there are 2 ways I can think of to clean a river. One is to desperately try to pull out all the pollutants. And so we can do that, but there's always going to be somebody pouring more pollution into the river. So to me, the better thing is to flush the river with clean water, to make better things, good things, and just to, kind of overcome with that clean infusion, maybe to overcome evil with good would be a way to say it. But I think that's what you're doing. So I hope that you're going to get to make lots and lots and lots of things. And I know you are raising up and equipping lots of people around you. And I think that's exciting.
Yeah, no, it's humbling, I guess, to be in the position that I am. There aren't a lot of people that have been able to be the creator showrunner on a show that has gone for 4 seasons, right? I think that list is pretty small. And so I don't look at it that way like, oh, hey, instead I'm just like, oh man, this has been quite the journey. And I'm just going to keep looking at what baby step is ahead of me next.
Yeah. Well, thanks for being with us today. It was great to hear from you.
Yeah, well, thank you. And thank you for what you've meant to Vindication, just being a supporter and proponent of the show and keeping it going. So I really appreciate that.
We're fans.